Hey guys, so on this episode of Make It with Calvin, I'm going to take you through the thought process behind hacking up a perfectly good boxcar that I picked up for, I believe, $5 over at the O-Scale West show, and talk to you about why you might actually want to consider doing that, depending upon the size of your layout and what your needs are. So let's dive into it. So to set the stage here, this is a scene on a 6-inch deep by 24-inch long ON18 micro layout. For those who don't know, ON18 is O-scale 148 scale trains running on N-scale track, so it simulates approximately 18-inch gauge, which was pretty commonly used for light-duty applications and industrial, mining, things like that. So obviously we get off to a start here with a space constraint. The overall layout depth is 6 inches. You can't see it, but there's a little bit of an area that's cut out for water. So all of a sudden we're really limited on space when we throw the tracks in there. So one thing I could have done is I could have dropped a full-size boxcar into the scene here with the full depth. And yes, it could have worked, but the problem is I would have had no room in the front here for any kind of a platform, and that's actually something I really wanted to have, was something that add to the scene. So I could have figures standing there, I could have some barrels of, whatever product this railroad will be hauling, things like that. And I felt like, you know what? I spent so little on the boxcar. If I managed to absolutely destroy the thing, it's a learning experience, and I was still able to salvage the underframe, so you know what? No risk, no reward. Now that being said though, to cut up something like this is definitely something that you need to take your time on and be careful with. Boxcars are obviously going to be a bit easier, especially considering that this had vertically scribed siding on the ends of it. Pretty much gave me a cut line to start with. So I came along with an X-Acto knife along the line that I figured was close enough to what I wanted, and just started slowly cutting through it that way on one side, going through it on the other. And then for the roof, I just did the same thing in approximately the same spot, and eventually was able to make a deep enough groove in the styrene that I was able to then flex it and pop it apart. Now another option is you can use a razor saw. My only problem with razor saws is I've had issues with them slipping and then it hits your finger, and that's a bad day. That said though, whatever method you use, take your time, be careful. Don't expect the edge to be perfectly clean, but you can always sand it down later. Now in my case, I was able to take this over to my job and use our belt sander, and just very lightly just run it back and forth over it, pausing to let the plastic have time to cool so it didn't melt into a giant puddle. If you don't have a belt sander, you don't feel comfortable doing it, you can just take a piece of paper, sandpaper, some coarse sandpaper, lay it down on a flat surface and just sand it that way. Both are perfectly viable methods. Obviously, do whatever you feel the safest with. Now that being said, once I got it cut out, I did come along and paint the inside with flat black paint. I have not fully decided yet if I want to cover the back of this and just leave the boxcar, just there for visuals, or if I actually want to make this have any kind of control panel inside. Personally, it's kind of tiny for that, or store rail cars or things like that. Still haven't figured that out yet, so that's why I haven't done anything on the back. But that will not be very hard to do. Now for the base of this, I just whipped this up very quickly over in Adobe Illustrator, and then came along with my K40 laser, cut the parts out, glued them together, and pretty much that's how I built the base. I stained it using Hunter Line's alcohol stains, worked very well, glued it down, did some ballasting around it, and it really ties the scene together now. So as for attempting something like this, definitely if you're not comfortable, look and see if you can pick up some really cheap equipment. Sometimes you can find it at a thrift shop, a train store, things like that, like, the not super detailed lifelike came in the kit that somebody got for Christmas and then they moved on to more realistic looking rail cars. Pick yourself up one or two of those and just practice on that. You're gonna, have a little bit of a learning curve, but it's a lot better to practice on something like that where if it goes wrong, it's not the end of the world versus potentially hacking up something that's nice that actually cost a bit of money. Now, if you've done something like this on your layout, I would love to hear about it. I did also pick up some tank cars from Frank, so I am debating if I want to do anything with those or not. Time will tell, but as always, I hope you guys enjoyed, you learned something along the way, and I'll conclude the video with some gratuitous laser shots that you guys seem to love as well, and some photos of the finished product. So, hope to see you guys here next time on Make It with Calvin.